5 years ago, my dad, my sister, and I started a bakery on our family farm called the Flour Barn. We are open Fridays and Saturdays 8 to 11, and then the rest of the week is spent prepping our from-scratch baked goods. We also teach one class each week, ranging from rolling your own cinnamon rolls, creating sourdough, and even learning how to mill your own grains. On top of all of this, we are busy raising our young families. Ellen is expecting her 5th baby at the end of August, and I currently have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. Since making these videos, it's been crazy to me all that happens in 1 week in our lives. Although our lives may seem hectic, they're really just full of excitement and joy. In this video, I'm going to take you through a week and show you how we work to make sure it's enjoyable, peaceful, but also efficient. Let's go! Starting off strong with a little barbecue on Monday night. My dad just got a smoker and we were happy to help him try it out. My parents just got a new playground, and so the kids are always itching to head over to Mammal and Papa's. Ellen and my parents both live on the property, so this is usually where we all get together. My parents built this house about 3 years ago, and it is located behind the bakery. When they moved to their new house, Ellen moved into the old farmhouse. Our favorite part of the new house is definitely the views. Tuesdays are always the days that we have our classes, and this week's class is Artisan Sourdough. Although I don't work at the bakery on Tuesday, I spend the day with my kids, and I always need a little latte pick-me-up before the class. This day's drink of choice was a almond milk caramel flat white. A flat white is just a little bit less milk than a latte, and I really like it because it has a stronger espresso taste. Every time I make a latte and film it, I always like to do a little oh, it's a good latte. And my sister thought this was so embarrassing, so she just was making fun of me. For this class, each student gets to leave with an active sourdough starter. So here's the mama starter. And then we put it into a jar so that everyone gets to take home a little bit of starter. And then during the class, we discuss how to maintain your sourdough starter. For this class, we want our students to all be able to shape a loaf of sourdough, score it, and then bake it. But we also want them to get the experience of creating the dough. So how we structure this class is we already prep 12 loaves the day before, and then when they get to the class, they start by shaping a loaf of sourdough. We then put that into our proofer, and that will be the loaf that gets baked today. The rest of the class is spent learning how to create the dough and perform stretch and folds, and then they'll be able to take that dough ball home and bake that loaf of dough at their house in their home oven the next day. This class is really focused on giving our students a complete understanding of how to create a sourdough loaf, including a timeline that will fit into their regular schedule, tools that will make it easier on them, and then we also leave plenty of time for them to ask questions. Not only is this our most popular class, it's also the class we've gotten the most feedback from. We hear constantly that people are still making sourdough loaves weekly, and that is really our goal with our classes at the bakery. We always start each class off with introductions so we can get to know each of our students. This always seems to relax everybody and get them excited for the class. Ellen is normally the one that teaches this class, but as many of you know, she's in her 3rd trimester of pregnancy and she's due in about a month. This leaves her becoming very out of breath during this long class, but luckily we have our full-time employee Paige, who actually does the sourdough each week, and she is teaching the class today. As I mentioned earlier, we start the class off kind of at the end of the sourdough bread process. We want to start by shaping a loaf that we've prepared for our students so that by the end of the class, they're going to be able to have a baked loaf of sourdough. I really think this is why this class is so successful and why our students leave having a real understanding of how to create the loaves. I think that's because they really get to see each part of the process in depth, and although it does make the class a little more difficult in hitting each part of the process, I think it is really necessary for people to get a full understanding of how to create the perfect artisan sourdough loaf. Once our loaves are shaped and in the proofer, we start on our dough. No matter what class we're teaching, we always talk about the benefits of weighing your ingredients. Not only does this make sure that you're doing the recipe accurately, it also ensures that in the future you're going to get the same results from each recipe. Now, sourdough is affected by weather and humidity, but if you start with the same constant recipe, you're going to be able to understand and handle the changes in weather and humidity. While everyone is working on their dough, I start to get the proofed loaves out of the proofer and ready to be scored. We make sure to initial each of our loaves and keep a chart of each student's loaf so that everyone is getting their loaf. At the bakery, we do have a bread oven that holds up to 12 loaves. While we are baking these in the bread oven, we make sure to do a full demonstration on how to bake the loaves at home in a Dutch oven. We did used to teach this class using a Dutch oven, but once we got the bread oven, we found that it was a more interesting experience to see how a professional bread oven works and why people bake in a Dutch oven to kind of mimic the effects of a professional bread oven. We have found that our students enjoy getting to see the behind the scenes of how professional bakers bake and seeing how equipment works, while also getting the knowledge to be able to mimic these practices in their own homes. There are certain moments in classes that are extra special, and it's usually when people start to see the process of baking really working out. One of those moments is during the sourdough class, when the dough goes from being shaggy, wet, and not holding together at all to becoming stretchy and silky. And then everyone's favorite moment is when they finally get to hold their crusty, beautiful artisan loaves. I think the best part about taking a class is that you can really just come in, learn a new skill, practice that skill, and then you don't have to clean up anything. So our students get to take all their stuff home, and then we stay for about half an hour, do the cleanup, and then there was such a beautiful sunset when we were leaving. I just had to take a video. It's finally Thursday, and today I get to do one of my favorite things, which is roll cinnamon rolls. Although every day holds a lot of prep at the bakery, once Thursday hits, things are really in full swing. We're rolling cinnamon rolls, we're laminating croissants and danishes, and we're just getting the final prep done to be open on Friday and Saturday. One reason I love working on Thursdays is that I get to work with my dad, my sister, and usually my cousin Lizzie, although she is out on vacation this week. One of the best parts of working with my dad is that he is a really good barista, and I always feel like his drinks taste the smoothest and the most flavorful. So this morning I had him whip me up an almond milk flat white. But I would never tell him that he's the best barista, because once you give that man a compliment, he never stops bringing it up. One key tip to making cinnamon rolls is making sure that your butter is soft enough to easily spread it out. So I always leave the butter out the night before, and then I get that room temperature butter, and I just heat it up a little bit. I don't want it melted, I just want it smooth enough that it rolls out easily. And we spread the butter on every inch of the dough, and you just want a thin layer. You don't want it too heavy, or else when it heats up in the oven, it will melt out and cause leakage that can end up burning. Then we use about 3 cups of our cinnamon sugar mixture that I'm actually going to show you how to make later on. And we just coat the rollout in cinnamon sugar, and we leave about an inch at the bottom with no cinnamon sugar. And then we kind of pat the cinnamon sugar into the butter so that we don't lose any of the cinnamon sugar in the rest of the process. So then we start to roll up our rollout, and we want to make sure that we're not rolling it too tight, or else the cinnamon rolls can have the centers pop out when they bake, but we also don't want it to be too loose, or they will lose their structure in the oven. And then that 1 inch that I left uncovered, I use to pull up to the rollout and pinch, and that just helps none of the cinnamon sugar to fall out in the transfer process. Each rollout that we start with is exactly the same number of ounces. So we weigh each dough ball into about 107 ounces, and then we sheet it. and then we know that each rollout will give us 24 rolls. So this leaves us with very consistent cinnamon rolls every time. We used to lovingly call our rolls artisan when we were hand rolling each of them. Before we had a sheeter, we had to roll out each of these giant rollouts, and because we were hand rolling them, it was hard to maintain the same thickness throughout. So oftentimes we'd have some rolls that were bigger and some rolls that were smaller, and they just weren't as consistent as we have now. Now we have a sheeter that we're able to set to the same thickness every time. So these are going to be 7.5 millimeters. That's what they're rolled out to every time, and that is what allows us to have such consistent looking cinnamon rolls. It's such an exciting time to be a baker in my community because it really feels like people are all in and behind the idea of a local food movement. People are really searching out to find local bakers where they can get their weekly bread or their freshly baked cinnamon rolls for their weekend. And that is something that wasn't nearly as popular 5 years ago when we started our bakery. When we started, I thought our biggest problem was going to be finding people to buy our baked goods. We spent so much time marketing our business and trying to build a brand that people would want to come to. Now our biggest challenge is making enough product. It just feels like that the local bakery movement is looking for bakers right now. It's a job that people are seeking out. And if you have a talent and a love for bakery, I encourage you to just go for it. But I will say that although our clientele may be easier to find, it doesn't mean that it isn't a difficult task to become a local baker. So while finding customers may be easier these days, the most challenging part of being a local baker is being able to produce beautiful baked goods at a high quality and high quantity. I would urge any local baker or someone trying to start a microbakery to really find a system that works for you. Whether that's bulk making cinnamon rolls, bulk making cookies, whatever it is, you want to find a system where you can get a lot of certain baked good in a not too grueling process. So that doesn't mean it doesn't have to take time. It just needs to be something that you can enjoy and that doesn't lead to burnout later on. Something that has really helped us as a bakery is learning to control our dough. So in playing around with yeast, amounts of yeast, and also the refrigeration, we have learned to control our dough to put it on a schedule that works for us. So we know that it's going to take us almost a full day to shape all of our cinnamon rolls. So we prep all of the dough in bulk the day before. So Wednesday, all of that brioche dough is made. And then it sits for an overnight rise. And that is technically its first rise. It sits overnight in the fridge, already segmented out. The next day, I'm going to shape all of my dough. So I get it out of the fridge, I put it through the sheeter, and I shape it. It's then going to go for its second rise in the fridge to be baked on Friday or Saturday. So it's either going to get one night of a rise or 2 nights of a rise. Not only is this possible, it's actually preferable for the dough. A long fermentation only adds to the flavor and the texture of your dough. What we've had to keep in mind is to control the amount of yeast that we put into our dough. So we decrease the amount of yeast from our original recipe so that we have a slower rise. So although our cinnamon rolls do rise, they just rise at a slower pace. And that's why they're able to sit overnight for 2 nights. Now when it's time for them to rise before they bake, they do have to be taken out of the fridge the night before. Because we get up at 3 a.m. to bake our cinnamon rolls on Saturday, we get them out at about 10 o'clock on Friday evening. This allows them to be nice and puffy and ready to go by 3 a.m. on Saturday. We have spent a lot of time trying to figure out this process because in the past we have been very limited on the amount of time we could spend in the bakery. So anytime our kids were napping, we would run out and be able to put some stuff together. But rarely did we have full days where we could spend prepping. Now that we have 2 full-time employees, we are able to get a lot more prep done, but the original recipe was created with limited times in mind. Now here I am creating our cinnamon sugar mixture. We use a combination of brown sugar, cinnamon, and cornstarch. The cornstarch is really there to help the filling stay thick as it bakes. So if you've ever made cinnamon rolls and you've noticed that the filling has leaked out and maybe even burned, this is to help that filling to not leak out and to hold its structure as it bakes on high heat. To see my full recipe for these cinnamon rolls, which includes the cinnamon sugar filling as well as our icing recipe, be sure to look in the notes in the comments below. It's always funny for me to think back to when we started the business, because me and Ellen would actually stand side by side and roll the rollouts together. We just thought they were way too long for one person to roll, and now thinking about doing this with 2 people seems like it would just slow the process down so much. But back then I just remember it was so fun and we were just learning so much every time we baked. Through sharing more about our bakery behind the scenes and then also just products, I've gotten so much feedback from other local bakers saying that they've gotten ideas from us or been inspired, and that is so exciting to me because I love what I do, and the thought that us sharing what we do could lead to someone else being able to do that is so exciting. So I always urge you, if you have any questions, to feel free to reach out, and definitely be sure to comment any thoughts or questions you may have. Sometimes I wonder how we ever had the confidence to start our bakery, but most of it I feel like was one, Ellen was so talented. People were constantly telling us how talented of a baker she was, so I had complete confidence in her. But also I was only 20 years old, and I think I just was not afraid back then. Now I think I would be a lot more intimidated at the idea of starting a business that I didn't fully understand. Now there's a lot more content out there on microbakeries. It's easier to kind of see what it looks like. But back 5 years ago, I had never seen anyone else doing what we were planning to do. And although that was intimidating, it was exciting to just be able to be creative and go with what we wanted out of our bakery. What you see me putting in pans right now is actually our honey buns. They use the same dough as our cinnamon roll recipe. They're just made with a thicker rollout and they're cut thinner, and then they are glazed instead of iced. So they're kind of like a combination between a cinnamon roll and a donut. Now we're moving on to our PB&J rolls. This consists of a creamy peanut butter filling with a raspberry homemade compote and a peanut butter crumb topping. So the peanut butter filling is a mixture of cream cheese, peanut butter, and sugar. The raspberry compote is made in-house, and then the peanut butter crumble is just peanut butter and powdered sugar, and it tastes just like puppy chow. You always want to be careful to not add too much filling because, like I said, when anything leaks out of your rolls, it can cause that to burn. So with jam especially, you want to be careful because when jam heats up, it does get even more liquidy and can leak quickly. Now this amount is really the perfect amount to ensure that you have the flavor from the compote, but not too much that your jam is just leaking out of your rolls. Again, I'm going to shoot for getting 24 rolls out of one rollout. You may notice that I've been rotating between putting rolls directly on the sheet pan and putting rolls into these square aluminum pans. So I do rotate, but my preferred way is definitely using these pans. It's just nicer. I think it allows you to get a more consistent bake. You don't have to fill the pan. So you could just bake one of these squares by themselves, or you could put them on a sheet pan and get 6 per pan. The reason that I do some directly on the pan is because using these pans, I can get 24 cinnamon rolls or whatever roll onto a sheet pan. If I put them directly on a sheet pan, I can get 36. So profit wise, you do want to get the most out of each oven load. So because I'm able to fit more, it is better, and also it doesn't take up as much space in my fridge. So for people who are limited in fridge space and limited in and want to get the most out of each oven load, I would say in that case it's better to do them directly on the sheet pan. But for people who want easier cleanup, easier you can just put the lids on these and put them out for sale, whereas the other ones I have to ice them and then box them separately off the sheet pan. It's just definitely less work to do them in these aluminum pans. So here's a little behind the scenes of our back room. Someone asked me, they're like, how do you store everything in the fridge if you only have one fridge? But that's just the one side. The one side has one fridge and the other side actually has 4 fridges and 1 freezer. And here's my favorite chocolate. But yeah, so this room has 1 fridge, and that's where we keep like the smaller stuff, condiments, and then the other fridge is more of where we keep the racks of cinnamon rolls, sourdough, focaccia, cheesecake. All of that is kept in the back fridge. So in this fridge, like I said, there's like fruit, and then all of our sauces we make, we put into there. Some of the fillings that we prep, compotes that we prep are kept in this fridge. So we do, if you are wanting to start a bakery, you will know that you're going to need a lot of fridge space, because that is what really gives you control over your doughs. One thing I really dreamed of when we started this was that while I was working, I could also be able to see my kids. And because my mom watches them, I'm able to look out the window and just be able to enjoy them while I'm getting stuff done. And now it's Friday morning, and finally we get to start seeing our customers. Fridays are our kind of peaceful, slow days. Saturday mornings are very hectic and very busy. We usually have quite a line on Saturday mornings, whereas Fridays are new hours that we've recently started doing. And so we still have a smaller crowd on Fridays, but it's kind of nice for people who don't want as much of a rush as the Saturday morning crowd. Friday mornings are just more peaceful out on the porch, and there's usually plenty of seating outside. On Saturday mornings, we have a coffee station, so we have 2 people working the coffee station. We have 1 person working our case, and then we have a cashier. Whereas on Fridays, because it's a slower day and we have a smaller menu, we have 1 person working the coffee, one person working each of the stations. But because it's slower, it works out well. The reason we added Friday hours was because we are already out there working the entire day, so we thought we might as well open it to the public so that while we're getting stuff done for Saturday, we can also be selling some product. We want to make sure that our items are at their best when people receive them. So items like Danishes, we always bake the morning of. We would never sell a day-old Danish. They're just so much better when they're freshly baked. But there are certain items like cookies and muffins that almost get better the second day. So we do bake all of our muffins, our cookies, and our brownies on Friday to be sold on Saturday. We also bake things like cheesecake and key lime pie bars throughout the week and keep them in the freezer to get out on Friday.
Well, hello, this is the Money Pie Farms corn stand. We are right here at the flour barn today. It's Friday, so...
This is the Bailey kids who come out to our farm to sell sweet corn, pumpkins, whatever they're growing. The kids do most of the work. They come and they sell everything. They're also at farmers markets, and it's just been great having them. They have wonderful personalities, and they're just a great group of kids to have out to the barn. One other thing we do on Fridays is we bake all of our focaccia and our croissants. And that's because we turn the focaccia into sandwiches, and we turn the croissant into cream croissants. And so they have to be completely cooled to be able to fill them with whipped cream the next day. If I was selling a plain croissant, I would definitely want those to be freshly baked. But because we're filling them with whipped cream and fruit, it is just as good for them to be a day old, and also it just helps them to have the right texture. So all of this prep work is going to make Saturday morning go as efficiently as possible. It's Saturday morning, so you know what that means? A red eye. A red eye is just 2 shots of espresso added to a cup of coffee, and it just gives me the right amount of energy I need to be able to get all our baking done with a positive attitude. Also, Lizzie just got back from her vacation last night, so she's here today, and we're all excited to see her back and to hear all about her trip. And in true Ellen fashion, she just whipped up all these different blueberry freezer jams last night. So we're going to sell those on the harvest table. And here I am getting our whipped cream ready for the morning. We use whipped cream in our strawberry cream croissants. We use them on our cheesecake and then also on our key lime pie bars. Another great item that is easy to do ahead and freeze and then just get out for easy baking is biscuits. So scones and biscuits and cookies can all be made ahead, shaped, and then frozen, and then be baked directly from frozen state into the oven. And then here are our PB&J rolls. They came out beautifully, and Lizzie is topping them with a cream cheese peanut butter icing. And then once that is spread out, they will be topped with a little bit more of that raspberry compote. For most of our specialty rolls, we try to top them with something similar to what we're using in our other rolls. So for this icing, we take our vanilla cream cheese icing and we simply add peanut butter to it. So that way we're not having a ton of different containers of different types of icing. This is really one way to streamline your prep process and streamline your process in the morning icing. We also, when we do our cobbler rolls, we usually stick with the same icing we use on our honey buns. It's a glaze made of butter, vanilla, milk, and a little bit of salt. So we really just stick with our favorite recipes and we just make minor adjustments for specialty rolls. Keeping things simple isn't just good for consistency in your baked goods, it's also good just for mental space. When you have too many things going on in your head, it is really what makes the whole thing feel stressful. Whereas if everything is streamlined and not taking up space in your brain, then you're not going to get overwhelmed as easily. Also, if you've never had a bear claw, it's one of my favorite pastries. It's one of our more recent additions. I'd say we've had it for about half a year now, but it's definitely become a quick favorite. And this is our specialty Danish for the week. It is a black raspberry Danish. We locally picked black raspberries, and we're just adding it onto a cheese Danish. I've mentioned before that we've gotten our start using pre-order, and I do love the pre-order system. I think it's a great way to gauge how many people you can expect for the weekend, which can then allow you to have an understanding of how much product to make. One thing I will say is keeping it limited is useful in the morning. When you have too many different things that you need to box up, it can make it a little hectic in the morning. Cinnamon rolls are a great thing to have on the pre-order menu because you have to box them anyway, or at least we do. We box them in packs of 4, so we just set them aside for the customers who pre-ordered. But some items we don't put on the pre-order menu. For instance, our slices of cake, those are first come, first serve items. This is the first year we've had our homestead table, which is where we have started putting our sourdough bread, buttermilk biscuits, homemade jams, fresh produce, herbs, and I've really just enjoyed being able to have that table there for our customers, for them to be able to get produce, eggs. When we have them, we put out farm fresh eggs as well. So we really enjoy having this table here. In the last few moments, I always get a little bit nervous that we either aren't going to have anyone show up or we're going to have too many people show up. People start lining up at the door, which is exciting but nerve-wracking, and then it's time to open. This is what I look forward to all week, getting to see customers come in, getting to see how excited they are about maybe a new item we have, or one of their favorite items. We really have a great flow of regulars now, so I'm always excited to see our regular customers, but then I'm also excited to see new faces that come through the door. Our flow goes, you walk by the homestead table and you can actually pick up a basket if you want to get a loaf of bread and maybe some farm fresh eggs and any produce. And then you go to the coffee table. You can order your coffee there. And then while you're going through the rest of the line, your coffee will be prepared. Next, you'll head to the roll table where you can pick out your pack of cinnamon rolls or pecan rolls. We also have quiche and cookies on that table, and then you go through the case. We box up whatever you want, and then you can either eat outside or take your baked goods home. And we always love going outside to see everyone enjoying their baked goods. I really love to bake, but my favorite part about owning a bakery is getting to interact with the community every week. And I know that sounds cheesy, and in high school I would have thought that that was actually my nightmare, constantly talking to people. That would have made me so nervous. But now I've just found so much joy in it. It's like I've found this new part of myself that I didn't know was there. If I had to give advice to someone else who was wanting to start a microbakery or to sell baked goods to their community, I would say to remember what the true focus is. It's not just on your love of baking. It needs to also be about your love for your community and your love for the people that are going to be eating those baked goods. People crave good connections, and to pair that with delicious baked goods, you really can't go wrong. If you've enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel, and be sure to check out the other videos in this series. Also, be sure to check out our blog, theflourbarnhomestead.com, for more baking tips and recipes. I'll be linking any recipes I referenced in this video in the description below. Thank you guys for watching.